I do want to talk about January 6th. So the January 6th footage, when Kevin McCarthy came to you and your team about going through this footage, did he ever, we're talking about caveats and conditions, what you just talked about with Fox, did Kevin McCarthy come to you with any sort of caveats or conditions? Chuck Schumer has said, that Tucker's been cherry picking things he wants to show on the show, which is laughable, of course, because in my opinion, we got to see already cherry-picked coverage during the January 6th hearing, so it's pretty hilarious and hypocritical to me. But anyway, your response to these cherry-picking comments, and were there sort of any conditions about here, we're going to hand over 44,000 hours of footage. What was your thought on that? I mean, knowing you, like, holy shit, what? We're going to look at 44,000 hours of footage?
Well, we've been pushing for it since the first week. One of my children was in the building when that happened.
Wow.
One of my kids works in the Congress and called me. I was getting my hair cut. Ashley Babbitt had just been shot. He heard the gunshots because he was right there. As an employee, not as a protester,
right,
to be clear. But so I had been interested in it. Of course, I'm from Washington, so I had been interested in it. And since the first week, I had said we should, let's find out what really happened. Everyone's characterizing it, and my instinct as a journalist, but just also as a person, is let's know more. And they never turned it over. And for the record, I had been highly, highly critical of McCarthy, of Kevin McCarthy, for the last, I don't know, ever since I've been on TV, I've been critical of McCarthy. So we're not friends, for sure. Why did he give it to my show? Probably because I asked. I think we're the only people who asked. Maybe there were others. I'm not aware of anyone else who asked. We asked. And here's the process in one sentence. We sent a bunch of producers up to Capitol Hill. They came with a bunch of different stories they were interested in. They got a computer system, the use of the Capitol computer system, which allowed them to pull up separate rooms by, location and time. They did not have facial recognition software, unfortunately, but they had this system which allowed, what was happening in the speaker's lobby at this hour, and they watched all the tape. Many, many hours. And of the 41,000, a huge percentage, the majority, the Capitol complex is enormous. It includes the Library of Congress. There are security cameras in, closets. A lot of this stuff was just empty rooms. But of the relevant footage, we're not aware, and trust me, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out if we were being manipulated here. I don't think there's any way they could have manipulated it. It is definitely possible that we didn't find relevant footage, for sure. That's always possible. But the two things I know are no one got in our way, including the Capitol Police, who later denounced us. We ran all of our footage by Capitol Police before putting it on TV and said, just to be clear, you are saying this could be a security risk. Is it a security risk? And only in one case, he said, we don't want you to show the details of this door. So we blurred the door.
In the Jacob Chansley video. Yeah, that blurred section of the Jacob Chansley.
Exactly right. And I announced that on the air. That's the only change we made, but we vetted this, not because I thought it was a security risk. It's a public building that has tours through it every day. I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. So this security risk bullshit. But I went along with it anyway, just to say that we did. Okay? So we could never be accused of putting anyone's life at risk, absurd as that claim is. And then we put it on the air. The main problem we had was we didn't have facial recognition software. So I'm allowing for the possibility, I would say the distinct possibility, that we missed stuff. I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff. We did our best, and we spent a long time doing it, but 3 weeks. And the guys who did it, the producers who did it, were just absolutely fried. I saw them when they finished, and they they both looked like they went through a war. Just like staring at a screen for 3 weeks is a lot. But no, we had full cooperation from Capitol Police and from the Speaker's office. But what we couldn't do, which is the main thing I wanted to do, which was show that there were FBI agents in the crowd. And there were, and the FBI has admitted that. But it's obvious to me they played a pivotal role. Ray Epps clearly was working for somebody. He was not a pure civilian. He encouraged violence, and then the January 6th committee and Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson and Adam Schiff, they all defended him. He's their friend. What? He's not an insurrectionist. He's an ally. Like, explain that. It violates common sense. Okay,
right.
But we couldn't answer a lot of these questions because we couldn't identify the people positively, and because we couldn't put their video on the screen. Because what if we're wrong? I mean, right. I tried to be as responsible as we could be. Like, there were a lot of things going on there, as you know, that were clearly part of something that was not organic. It was very obvious. Guys with earpieces, breaking things, and then running away when they're filmed. Like, what is that? And some of these people are so obviously cops. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, you know?
Right.
Some like bodybuilder type with short hair and a MAGA hat. And he's kind of, oh, spare me. A guy with a gun. You know, this was, you know, I know what's going on here. A lot of this was clearly influenced by federal agents or informants. It was, okay? But I didn't want to suggest that someone was a federal agent or informant unless I knew for a fact, because you really could get someone in trouble, right? If you're like, this is the guy, and like, but we don't know. I do know it's very clear that something very strange is going on with Ray Epps. We've named him repeatedly. We've invited him on the show repeatedly. I mean, don't lie to my face. Like, the Ray Epps thing is
right.
You know, isn't organic. Sorry.
Well, we know from the Proud Boys trial this week that an FBI agent was caught lying on the stand in front of a judge, right? Turns out that the FBI hid evidence from defense attorneys. I mean, this came out in trial. This is not just us, bullshitting here. And that according to the defense attorneys, unless they're lying in this, and it's possible, there was initially thought maybe there were criminal informants there that wanted this information scrubbed, removed from the records. We now know that it actually might have been an agent who wanted this information scrubbed from the records. And of course, we're wondering, oh my gosh, in these 41 hours that Tucker's going to have here, will we be able to see any more evidence of the Fed's involvement? So it appears without that facial recognition, what's the next step then? If we don't have that, what will happen with this footage? Will anyone else be able to kind of go through it with facial recognition? Will Congress be able to do it?
What you need is crowdsourcing here. I mean, you need this to be in as many hands as possible. McCarthy has said, and I don't have ownership of this footage. It's publicly owned, of course. It's not owned by the Congress. They don't own anything. This is like, it's insane, actually, how they treat the U.S. government like they own it. I mean, that's like your housekeeper pretending she owns your bank account. Like, these are our servants, okay? But they get these attitudes, and it's hard to disabuse them of them. But he has said, we're going to turn this over to the public, and that can't come soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. We're a primetime TV show. We're not, in the fabled news division. We're an opinion show, so we've kind of reached the limits, and it was only our show. Like, there was no other element of the company I work for, and there was no other news organization helping in any way. So I'm not whining, but we've kind of done what we could do. And from my perspective, like, the core claims about January 6th were a lie. It was not a violent insurrection, a deadly insurrection. It was a violent political demonstration, one of many in the year in which it took place. From January of 2020 to January of 2021, there were a lot of violent political demonstrations, including one at the White House where cops were injured than at January 6th. Though if we could kind of leave it there and stop lying about it, I'm not defending vandalism or hooliganism or violence at January 6th. Of course not. I abhor that. Just don't tell me it's the same as 9/11. If you start talking like that, if you start lying to me, I'm going to push back. Clearly, Nancy Pelosi wanted this to happen. There was a lot of intel that it was going to happen. That intelligence was kept from line officers at the Capitol Police. I know that because I've talked to them, and including some of their supervisors, and they all say the same thing. We were not given this intelligence. Well, why is that? They were the front line in this. Why would you keep it from them? And of course, the answer is you would only do that if you wanted it to be ugly and discrediting for the political party associated with it. And that's obvious. That's obviously what happened. So, like, I'm a conspiracy nut? Right. No. I probably should be a little more, I'm way too conventional. That's my problem is that. You always used to talk about UFOs when we worked together, and I'd be like, wow, Clayton on his UFO thing. Turned out you were totally right on all of it. And that was like a huge lesson to me. You were just more open-minded than I was. And so it's not a matter of like falling for crazy theories. It's a matter of letting the evidence guide your perceptions. Okay? Like, what are we looking at here? Take 3 steps back. What does this look like? Ray Epps telling people to commit violence, but he's not prosecuted. Okay, well, the evidence suggests that this is not what it looks like, obviously. Same with UFOs, same with the Kennedy assassination, all these areas that are like verboten, you're not allowed to ask questions. Well, why aren't you allowed to ask questions?
Right.
And the last thing I'll say is, like, they're not offended by craziness. They're not offended by conspiracy. If you go on TV tonight and say, I think the earth is flat, people just laugh at you. They don't care if you think the earth is flat. It's not a threat to anyone. But if you say, like, what actually happened with Building 7? Like, that is weird, right? It doesn't, like, what is that?
Right.
If you were to say something like that on television, they'd flip out. They would flip out. So you'd, like, lose your job over that. Why? It's my country.
Right.
Is it an attack on my country? Can I ask it? Like, I don't really understand. Do buildings actually collapse? No, maybe they do. I don't know. But, like, why can't I ask questions about that? Anything you're not allowed to ask questions about is something you should be asking more questions about, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I could talk to you for another few hours like we used to do, but you have to do your own show. You have a lot of work to do. You're the most watched show in television, one of the most important shows in television news, and really one of the important voices that we all can turn to in times of craziness for some clarity of thought. So I just want to thank you for taking some time out and sitting down with us here on this show. Our audience loves you. And this has been a real treat to go through this and be able to catch up with you, which we haven't been able to do for a few years.
Well, it's been an honor for me. And as I said in my text, when you're back in town, call me. Let's come stay at my house.